the whole culture of embedded media. You have literally embedded media that go over to Iraq or Afghanistan and they're with the military, and then you just have the ideologically embedded media, and oftentimes there's a crossover where they're just embedded in the culture, the friend circles, the sort of, they're drunk on power. What I think, though, is central on this issue of losing access. If journalists stood in solidarity with each other and had a united front, I mean, I sometimes am in press conferences where I feel like I'm Pigpen when I ask a question and everyone like sort of fleeing. We're not with that guy.
But when did that turn around? Because one has at least an illusion that at a different time it was different. Was it never? Jeremy?
No. I mean, look, I was tossed out in 1999 of an event of the Overseas Press Club Awards. We called it the Overseers Press Club Awards because Richard Holbrooke, who at the time was Clinton's UN ambassador, was giving the keynote address. The Overseas Press Club had made an agreement with him that he didn't have to answer any questions from a gathering of journalists. So I disrupted his speech and asked him a central question about the war in Yugoslavia. And Tom Brokaw stood up and yelled at me to go sit down and had security drag me out like I was a member of the Revolutionary Communist Party or something. They're dragging me out. And Amy Goodman, my colleague, came up and said, you can't kick him out because he hasn't won his award yet. Later that night, then, Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes helps Richard Holbrooke escape through an elevator so that he didn't have to answer our questions about a war that he was a central player in. So you see this collusion. You don't have solidarity with big journalists and the lesser-known journalists, and that's why we have such a failed state of journalism.
Do you think there was a moment where things shifted, Glenn, or was it always this way?
I think it's an interesting question. You know, I think people generally have this romanticized image of the American media as a result, particularly of Watergate, which is the classic case where an adversarial media investigated wrongdoing on the part of government officials, exposed it, and then helped bring the government down. But if you actually go back and look at what was happening even in the 1960s with the Vietnam War and the fraud that was the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which justified in most Americans' minds the sending of combat troops to Vietnam, a total fraud. Most American newspapers were unbelievably gullible and uncritical about repeating what it was that the government claimed without virtually any investigation. So I think these trends have been around for a long time. I don't think there was a golden age where everybody in the media was, a Jeremy Scahill getting kicked out of events for being rambunctious, for questioning government officials. But I think it is part of a continuum. I think it has really significantly worsened, though. And there's a lot of reasons why, but I think the principal reason is that these media organizations are no longer outside of the political and financial elite. They're simply integrated into the largest corporations. They're just media divisions of our largest corporations. And instead of being the kind of classic, lower middle class, rogue, gadfly, reporters are now nothing but corporate employees, and they advance in corporations by promoting the interest of their bosses, and that means having constructive and amiable relations with government power rather than conflictual relations.